Greetings, everyone, to a presentation and discussion of Kyle Bierman's paper, Spiritual Leadership in the Home, Where Pastors Fall Short. Kyle, I believe, will be with us tonight, perhaps listening in. I hope maybe at the end of the hour he might share a few words with us. But Kyle wrote this paper 2 years ago during the first offering of this seminar for the Doctor of Ministry program here at Rockbridge, and he did a stellar job. Absent someone of our own to speak on the topic, I have elected with his blessing to present that material tonight. If you downloaded his slide presentation in PDF format, I'm going to reference them so you can follow them through this brief video presentation. The first slide with the title is the first slide, and that's where we now begin. It is an understatement to say that spiritual leadership in the home is where pastors fall short. I know that because that is where I fell short early in my ministry, and it nearly destroyed everyone I held closest to me, and it nearly destroyed me. I can only thank God that I was between ministries when my family imploded. I thank God for the miracle of restoration and transformation. In the end, it was because of a strong and healthy home that made my later ministry in New England useful and effective for the kingdom of God. On page 13 of Kyle's paper, he recounts advice once given to a friend whose ministry had been destroyed because things did not go well for him at home. His friend had been counseled by a well-intentioned but foolish leader. "Pastor, you take care of the church, and God will take care of your family." One wonders from what pit that sprang. Slide 2. The Apostle Paul clearly teaches us that things at home need to be in order before one should be entrusted with the care of the church. How one treats one's wife or husband, how one treats one's children, is the only true predictor of how one is going to treat the flock of God. Slide 3. There is a steep and staggering cost to be paid should a pastor or spiritual leader lose his or her home. Conversely, a healthy home often corresponds to credibility and long-term tenure in the pulpit. Slide 4. No matter how you cut it, no other success compensates for failure in the home. Slide 5. Survey after survey confirms what so many of us have experienced. Too many pastors admit to having bad marriages, and I submit that many with bad marriages will not admit it. Our divorce rate is only a little better than that of the general public, and most of those who experience moral failure in a marriage, regardless of who is at fault, are going to find themselves out of the ministry. Slide 6, contrary to the notion that pastors work an hour or two each week, most are overachievers and cannot seem to find enough to do. In fact, as Doug Fields has put it, busyness is often worn as a badge of honor, but behind that badge we'll typically find a damaged spiritual life, a damaged family, and a damaged career. I would call that damaged ministry. I wouldn't have admitted it at the time, but busyness in the ministry was actually an escape for me from responsibilities at home. And how do I regret that? Slide 7. While we're thinking about escape from responsibilities at home, the word passivity comes to mind. Eli of 1 Samuel 2 is the prototypical passive parent. Was it from fear of being rejected, or was it simply lack of interest in his sons? Eli failed to parent them. He failed to set boundaries for them. Men often totally delegate child rearing to their wives, and while their wives can, with God's help, raise godly children, it's God's design that fathers play an active, personal, and intentional role. Ultimately, God will hold the father responsible for the moral guidance of his children. Slide 8. That brings us to the pastor's spiritual life. If a leader's family is to become Christ followers, a spiritual leader must first be himself or herself a Christ follower. Ken Boa has suggested 3 components of a spiritual life to which Christ followers are called, namely loving God completely, loving ourselves correctly, and others compassionately. The home is the Petri dish. It is the culture in which the spiritual leader must grow in his or her spiritual walk. And then from that, he begins by shepherding or pastoring his family. Slide 9. The task of the shepherd is to feed, protect, lead, and discipline the sheep. Might I add, his task is also to care for them, to show compassion toward them in the fullest sense of the word. They must not be harshly coerced, abusively treated, or neglected. To whom is our first duty? Well, in the home, our first duty is to our wives, or in the case of the ladies in our cohort, to their husbands. No relationship under heaven is more important than that of a pastor to his wife. If the marriage fails, the ministry fails. If the marriage fails, the home fails. And wow, do I know the experience and the pain of all of that. Wives need to be loved, protected. They are to be the object of unceasing prayer. As leaders, we must see our wives or our husbands through God's eyes. Slide 10. Similarly, spiritual leaders, to quote Kyle Bierman, should consider his children at the top of the list of his most important ministries. They must be taught, disciplined in love, invested in as a stewardship from God. So much could be said here, but slide 11. The pastor's family should function as a daily reminder of the centrality of the gospel. An elder who's more concerned with the fact that his children's behavior might sometimes embarrass him in public than he is concerned for the condition of their hearts is merely using his family as a prop in his personal public relationship campaign. Slide 12. So recognizing the high stakes, bad and good, for the gospel of Christ and his kingdom, we have a choice to make. What is your choice? As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.